Welcome to Victory News. It's Friday, October the 25th, 2024. I'm Greg Stevens, along with Fiora Hernandez, Tim Fox, Mike Garofalo's on assignment. Here are a few of the stories that we're watching for you today. North Carolina wants legal voters in the state to decide if non-citizens may vote in future elections. Ahead, we'll talk with the Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell, about this and more. And what is being behind all of this wicked movement targeting America's children? We'll bring you a first in a series of eye-opening Victory News special reports. But first, let's go to Tim Fox with our headlines. Tim.
Thank you, Greg. Existing home sales are set for a second consecutive year of record lows, on track to be with the worst since 1995. According to the National Association of Realtors, compared to 1 year ago, home sales in September dropped 3.5%. Analysts blame the drop in rising home prices and high mortgage rates. In September, the median home price in the U.S. stood at $404,500, up 3% over last year. According to Zillow, in 2020, during the last year of the Trump administration, the median home price in the United States was $248,857. In 2000 and in 2003, during her campaign for district attorney, Kamala Harris opposed an anti-gang measure that the majority of Californians supported in 2000, as reported by Breitbart News. Proposition 21 passed with 62% support. Harris campaigned as one of the few California prosecutors to oppose Proposition 21. Her alleged reasoning centered on the law forcing more young people into prison unnecessarily. Prop 21 changed how juvenile offenders were treated, especially gang-related offenders and those who committed violent and serious crimes, according to the California Legislative Analyst's Office. For example, it required convicted gang members to register with local law enforcement and agencies and increase criminal penalties for certain serious and violent offenses. Fiora?
Tim, Louisiana Attorney General Elizabeth Murrell filed a lawsuit on Wednesday against U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It charges that a Chinese national with a rare, aggressive, drug-resistant form of tuberculosis entered the U.S. illegally and was transferred across ICE facilities in Louisiana without adequate health screenings. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry described how the deadly disease got to America.
Patient zero started in China and moved somewhere between China and the United States where there was an illegal border crossing.
Attorney General Murrell argued that this exposed others to a potentially deadly disease with treatment costs exceeding $500,000. The lawsuit, initially filed on October 16, seeks to stop ICE from releasing infected detainees without court approval. A hearing is scheduled for October 31st. Florida Republican Attorney General Ashley Moody sued U.S. Attorney Merrick Garland Wednesday. Moody's complaint argued the FBI and DOJ almost immediately tried to block Florida from fully investigating the second assassination attempt on the former president at his Palm Beach golf course. Just the News reported that federal officials had stated Florida couldn't conduct its investigation or interview witnesses, but was only allowed to, quote, cooperate with the federal government's investigation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis issued an executive order directing state agencies to make sure the correct state charges were filed against the suspect, Ryan Routh. Federal authorities indicted Routh on 5 counts for allegedly pointing a gun at Trump through the bushes along the golf course green in an assassination attempt. Tennessee's Attorney General says his office uncovered a Biden-Harris administration plan to release a massive number of illegal immigrants into the state, but it was ultimately stopped. Jonathan Skrmetti said a federal document revealed immigration authorities had attempted to transport potentially thousands of single adult immigrants from out-of-state detention facilities into Tennessee with the help of nonprofit groups. Skrmetti wrote in a press release, quote, "The federal government's single most important job is to keep dangerous people out of our country, and instead it has let killers and rapists illegally cross our border and walk free on our streets." While the Tennessee plan was scuttled, ICE still released over 7,000 detainees from its Louisiana holding facilities with criminal records, including homicide, sexual assault, and armed robbery. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the Daily Caller on this report. Greg?
Thank you, Fjord. North Carolina wants voters to decide whether non-citizens may legally vote in future state elections. Fox News is reporting House Bill 1074, the citizen-only voting amendment, will clarify the state's constitution to read only a citizen may vote in North Carolina. The state law currently says, quote, every person born in the United States and every person who has been naturalized 18 years of age and possessing the qualifications set out in this article shall be entitled to vote at any election by the people of the state except as herein otherwise provided. If passed, the amendment would change the wording to say only a citizen of the United States who is 18 years of age and otherwise possessing the qualifications for voting shall be entitled to vote at this election in this state. Still a little confusing. Supporters believe the amendment will establish confidence in elections amid the ongoing immigration crisis. Joining us now is the author and director of investigations and research for Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell. Welcome back to Victory News, Chris.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
All right. North Carolinians will decide if non-citizens should be allowed to vote in state elections. Meanwhile, in Arizona, voters are being warned of long lines. Polls and Maricopa County election officials say it's going to take 10 to 13 days to completely tabulate all of the ballots. Chris, how could they not improve the voting process in the very place that the controversy happened last time in Arizona?
And they had 4 years to figure it out, and somehow they still failed. So this is more of an IQ test, I think, for the people of Arizona. How in the world could you possibly support these public officials who continue, despite lawsuits, federal investigations, state investigations, the state legislature got involved. Look, this is probably one of the most contentiously battled places for voting, and they still can't get it right. It's there's really no excuse. There's none.
The new governor, if my memory's right, wasn't she the Secretary of State in charge of elections?
Yes, she was, yeah.
You'd think as governor she'd fix it. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah. Judicial Watch.
Unless they enjoyed the ambiguity of it all.
Well,
right?
There's that. You filed a lawsuit against the DOJ for messages among top leaders of the FBI referencing social media posts of Special Agent Jeffrey Veltri. Tell us what you're looking for, Chris.
So Veltri wanted to be promoted to be head of the Miami office of the FBI. The problem was, on his social media, he had all this vitriolic, hate-filled ranting and raving against Trump. And so his bosses at the FBI, the loathsome Christopher Wray and others, said, hey, you better smarten up there, guy. How in the world do you think you could be promoted to be head of the FBI office in Miami, which has responsibility for where the president lives in Palm Beach, when you have all this hate language directed at the former president? So they went back and they scrubbed his social media to make him look like he's a Boy Scout. And now this same guy, supposedly in charge of the investigation, the assassination attempt on Trump, the second one. So, I don't think Veltri, frankly, is smart enough to be head of the FBI office in Miami, because what sort of person in that position would make all these public posts? It's crazy. It's reckless.
All right. Well, let's talk about hate speech for a second. Hillary Clinton showed up on CNN for her book tour to continue the Hitler rant against Donald Trump and his Madison Square Garden rally this weekend, explaining it's not just a rally for his supporters. Here she is.
Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled.
So what are the Democrats pushing the Trump-Hitler narrative so hard? Tell us about this election. Where are we?
Because they've got nothing left in the tank. They are out of gas. They're done. The economy's in the tank. Inflation's out of control. National security is a wreck. They've presided over the destruction of the country. And so when you have nothing else left to talk about your ideas, your proposals, your future, you have to resort to name calling. And this is the lowest, slimiest, most intellectually dishonest attempt to smear the president.
Will it increase in the next few days, you think?
Guaranteed. And they're actually advocating violence by doing this. Well, so if there's another assassination attempt, you know why.
Okay, Chris Farrell, thank you so much. God forbid, we'll pray against that, and we'll see you in just a moment. Fior?
Amen.
Greg, a report from the Microsoft Threat Analysis Center reveals China is targeting Republican Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama, Michael McCall of Texas, as well as Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, all of whom are up for election next month. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida is also said to be on the list from China. The Western Journal reports the Microsoft report said, quote, Chinese influence operations have focused on down-ballot Republican candidates and members of Congress that advocate for anti-Chinese policies. Senator Blackburn posted this message.
Well, the Chinese Communist Party, they are after me again. So nothing new. They've done it before, but I've got news for them. In order to save America, I will continue to break China.
Microsoft concluded in their report that, quote, the efforts demonstrated China's sustained attempts to influence U.S. politics. Cyber attackers from outside our border targeted Georgia's elections website earlier this month, with likely suspects being Russia, China, or Iran. According to reports, the hackers appeared to be zeroing in on Georgia's absentee ballot system, but cybersecurity company Cloudflare managed to stop it quickly. Officials think that this was a foreign test attack, checking the state's security before the election. According to a News Nation report, cyber attacks from foreign sources have increased recently. Jeffrey Wells is a fellow at the Cyber and Technology Center National Security Institute.
What they aim to do is to erode public trust in the democratic processes, as well as create social discord. And I think what we're starting to really see, though, a ramp up from the adversaries is kind of what I call creating confusion and a sea of lies.
More cyber attacks on our upcoming election by foreign actors are unfortunately expected. Tim?
Fior, former President Barack Obama and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris appeared on stage together for the first time in Georgia on Thursday. But first, Bruce Springsteen said Trump was running as an American tyrant. And self-professing Christian filmmaker Tyler Perry, well, he said this.
In this Donald Trump America, there is no dream that looks like me.
Former President Obama criticized Trump's character as macho and not a sign of true strength. Then he tried to sell Harris as the better choice.
We've got a candidate to vote for in this election who demonstrates that kind of character, who knows what real strength looks like, who will set a good example and do the right thing.
Harris will be campaigning again today with Barack Obama in North Carolina. Fior?
President Donald Trump was in Tempe, Arizona Thursday, focused on illegal immigration. Trump said under Kamala Harris, the United States has become an occupied country.
13,099 illegal alien convicted murderers were set to prey upon the United States of America. Think of that. And 425,000 convicted criminal aliens were released into our country over the last 3.5 years.
Later on Thursday, Trump joined a former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy, Senator Marco Rubio, and Charlie Kirk in Las Vegas for a rally.
We are just 12 days away, everybody, from taking back this country, and it starts in Las Vegas, everybody.
We will frack, 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 and drill, baby, drill, right? We're gonna drill.
Today, Donald Trump will appear on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Senator J.D. Vance was in Blue Wall Battleground State, Michigan on Thursday. The Republican vice presidential nominee addressed recent allegations from former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly to the New York Times, claiming Trump would be like a dictator. The label fascist also came up.
You could just, look, you could just record the boos of the crowd, and that's my response to that question. Look, Here's the thing about what John Kelly said. John Kelly was fired by Donald Trump, and he's pissed off about it, and he won't stop talking about it. Now, look, here's the thing. Every time that John Kelly says something happened, you've got 3 or 4 people who were allegedly in the room when it happened saying he's making it up.
The Hill Decision Desk HQ's poll shows Trump and Harris nearly tied in Michigan. Greg?
Leading up to a historic election in just over a week, top issues on the minds of many are border security, the economy, and world wars. But what about Satan's mission to steal, kill, and destroy the destiny of our children? Today, Chief Correspondent Fiora Mendez begins a special series of conversations about identity.
But Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven."
How many of you are mothers? How many of you are grandmothers? Do you agree that we are in the fight of a lifetime to protect the prophetic destiny of Christian children and really children as a whole? Show of hands. Do you agree with that?
The Victory News and Flashpoint contributors are not alone. In fact, hundreds of thousands, even millions across the globe agree.
The world knows we are in a crisis moment right now.
There is one collective cry.
Om jeg må gå til grunne, så må jeg gå til grunne.
If we perish, we perish.
Brothers and sisters, we are in the hour where the enemy wants to silence the voice of the church.
Give me the number one issue threatening the prophetic destiny of our children today.
Their identity. If you can get the identity of somebody, then all of a sudden you can manipulate their behavior, they become controllable, and then now you have a society that's on a massive tilt.
The children that are lost, if they don't have a relationship with God, then they can be easily confused. So I see God removed from our culture is our very number one issue.
But you know what? It's the same scheme that the enemy has always brought. When he said to Eve back in Genesis, did God really say? But he is after our children's identities. If he can take their identities, he can stop the destiny that God has for them, a calling that God has on their lives.
We have gotten so far away from God's foundation of the family. Everything around us is beginning to crumble. And unfortunately, our children are they are the number one people that are being attacked by this.
They're the most vulnerable, they're the most innocent in all of this, right?
Yes, I'm gay.
Dad, I'm trans.
Popular. You're gonna be popular.
Do you all agree it's a supernatural evil agenda?
I personally have a testimony out of dealing with same-sex attractions that dominated a majority of my life, my developmental years, and have grieved that and have moved on past that. So when I, as many parents do, put my son in kindergarten and was excited for this new season as a parent. And only 2 months in, he was exposed to a transgender book in the library. I was mortified, to say the least. These children are vulnerable. They are in their developmental years, and what they are trained in as children, they will experience, and there will be consequences for the rest of their life.
Little Sage Blair began to transition at school and began to be threatened and sexually harassed, and the parents were not told. She ran away because she was afraid, and she ran right into the arms of a sexual predator that raped and sex trafficked her across state lines. When she was found, a Maryland court did not want to give her back to her parents because they felt they were not sufficiently affirming of a male identity. This administration right now is funding juvenile court and family court judges to be taught and trained that anyone who refuses to affirm a child's disordered identity, sexual identity, is unsafe.
Never in the history of the United States or in the world has a government threatened to come in and take away parental rights if you refuse to change the gender of your child. And we are now seeing it happen in many states across the country.
My daughter was taken from her loving home because the state of California claimed I was abusive. For not affirming her trans identity. Against my consent, my daughter was given testosterone instead of therapy. My daughter knelt down in front of a train. She was murdered by gender ideology. I beg you, stop pushing gender ideology.
The officials placed in office matter, and on November 5th, your vote is your voice. In the days ahead, Fiora will continue the conversation with Texas Children's Hospital whistleblower Dr. Ethan Heim and Christian leader in Peru who ousted 3 high-ranking government officials for gender ideology laws. And we even speak with a former witch. Their message, don't mess with our kids. Once again, let's talk with the Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell. Chris, you just heard how we're in a battle for our children physically and spiritually. I want you to listen to Joe Biden's Assistant Secretary of Health spout the lie that stopping a child's puberty is actually life-saving.
Gender-affirming care is life-saving, medically necessary, age-appropriate, and a critical tool for healthcare providers. As a pediatrician, when it comes to making sure kids are healthy and happy, I know how important care that affirmed someone's true identity can be.
So, Chris, what would have happened just a few years ago if you took your daughter to the doctor and they said she's a boy? We're going to cut off her breast. We're going to stop puberty. What would have happened? What's happened to our country?
Well, it's clearly child abuse. I want to congratulate Fiora for that excellent segment. I'm looking forward to seeing more of her work. But look, this is objectively disordered behavior. This is a psychological problem. It's an emotional problem that's being treated and applauded as some sort of success story. This is like telling somebody who has an eating disorder, hey, good luck with your diet, or handing an alcoholic a bottle of vodka and telling him good luck. This is objectively disordered behavior that requires treatment and therapy, and not being advocated and advanced as some sort of heroic, crusade. It is a radical fringe ideology that really needs treatment and medical help. This idea that this gender-affirming care is nonsense, and the faster we kind of snap out of this delusional mind virus that we're in, the better we'll be off as a country.
It's a lie. We've believed a lie. So let's talk more about that. Political commentator Guy Benson criticized Politico and CBS News for running a derogatory story against Donald Trump and a deceased war veteran from one anonymous source. Here it is.
That source in that Atlantic story is a single anonymous person. And people who were in the room for that at the time are on the record denying it entirely, categorically. The family of the slain soldier has come out rejecting it and backing former President Trump.
Chris, are you astonished to see a major article and a lead story on CBS News built on one lone anonymous source?
No, they do it all the time. This is routine. They don't care what the facts are. They've got an ideological objective, and they will say or do anything to accomplish it. So sadly, we've been fed on a steady diet of this for the past at least 4 years, longer than that. They have no qualms whatsoever. Look at all the lies around, whether it's Russia hoax with President Trump, or the hysteria and the lies put on the American public over COVID. It is a drumbeat of misdirection and lies.
All right, your Judicial Watch, you plan on monitoring Wisconsin's polls this election. Tell us why you're focusing on potential voter fraud this November and in Wisconsin.
We've successfully removed the false and inaccurate enrollment of 4 million people off voter rolls in this country. And we've done that under the law in courts. And so we've removed these false voter registrations. And in the case of Wisconsin, we're sending observers there because it's been a source, as you well know, of lots of mischief in the last election. So we're going to put eyes on what's going on there.
That's good. We need eyes on everything all across the country. You be eyes, everybody be eyes. JudicialWatch.org to stay up with Chris and Judicial Watch. Great to see you today. Thank you for the information you always bring us.
Thank you.
Fiora?
Greg, the son of a high-ranking House Democrat, allegedly raked in hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees from his father's campaign and from lobbyists who were seeking to influence the congressman on tax policy. According to Politico, Massachusetts Congressman Richard Neal's son, Brandon, launched a public affairs firm in 2020, roughly a year after his dad became leader of the House Ways and Means Committee. The Daily Caller reported Neal was paid nearly $200,000 by his father's campaign and more than $250,000 from lobbyists with investment firms. Morris Pearl, Patriotic Millionaires chair, told Politico lobbyists sending large sums of money to the son of a powerful politician with a great deal of tax policy control reeks of corruption. Politico reported the congressman's office said Neal had no idea his son was employed by lobbying firms. Tim?
If you are on a special Flashpoint Live Thursday night, Gene Bailey and guests discussed how some legacy media outlets are actually reporting on how the Trump campaign is gaining momentum and the Harris campaign is faltering.
If I was a Democrat, I'm not, I would be so upset at the party leaders for giving me these two as the candidates. Why would they? Why? And even the propaganda arm of the left, CNN, is so critical. I mean, we've all talked about how much we've enjoyed CNN the last few months, because they're telling the truth about how bad it is. I mean, it's so, how bad is it? It's so bad that even CNN is telling the truth about how bad it is. MSNBC, not so much. But it's that bad. And George W. Bush enjoyed the largest percentage of the Hispanic vote in the history of the United States. And I think it was about 41%. I think that President Trump is going to win the majority of the Hispanic vote. I think it's going to, we've never seen this before. Because the minority communities, Hispanics, African Americans, were tired of being lied to.
Now, you can watch this and all other episodes of Flashpoint when you visit govictory.com/Flashpoint. Greg?
All right, as we go today, that piece by Fior, there's going to be more coming this next week, and I know it troubles so many of you. Some people feel frustrated, hopeless. Listen, I want to tell you something. If you're in the situation, you have a family member that's in the situation of confused about gender or thinking they're a different gender, I want you to call a number, 877-281-6297, 877-281-6297. A loving, compassionate, trained, licensed prayer minister is ready to pray with you right now, not condemn you. We'll never do that. I encourage you to use the phone number and call that right now. Lord, we thank you for these reports that we've received today, that it inspires us to action for your will and your way in the earth to be performed. And we thank you for that. Thank you and bless our audience today. In your name we pray. Amen. Our thanks to Chris Farrell and especially you. Thanks for joining today. We're back at 5 Eastern, 4 Central with Convention of State Action President Mark Meckler. Make sure you're here as well. The world reports the problem. Victory Channel brings the answer. Whatever's born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that's overcome the world, our faith. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. You're a world overcomer. So stay in faith. God bless you. And we'll look for you this evening at 5 Eastern. Bye for now.